fair and just conclusion that Mueller could come to would be that he should never have accepted the position of special counsel, that he had conflicts so deep that accepting the role of special counsel could not be ethical and appropriate. You wonder, why would he take it? Well, when you find out that as FBI director, he and U.S. Attorney Rod Rosenstein were involved in the deep cover investigation into Russia's effort to corner the market using American uranium, and that Hillary Clinton and Eric Holder, others in the administration, approved the sale to a group, stockholders of which donated, as I understand, $145 million or so to the Clinton Foundation. In effect, the Clintons hit the Russian mega lottery, the Mega Millions lottery from Russia. And just a little tease was the $500,000 fee for just giving one little short speech by Bill Clinton. But if we look back at what has gone on, just look at some of the facts. It was shocking that FBI Director Comey did not have Cheryl Mills interviewed. She was Clinton's former chief of staff at the State Department. Now we're finding out, well, I guess, if Comey was going to draft a statement saying that there was not sufficient evidence to prosecute Hillary Clinton before he ever talked to Cheryl Mills or talked to Hillary Clinton or followed up on the most critical evidence, then clearly it makes sense why Director Comey would not want to make Cheryl Mills' interview recorded, would make an agreement with Cheryl Mills and the other potential defendants in the case that, if they just got to look at their laptops, they promised they wouldn't use anything in the laptop to prosecute them, and they would, the FBI would then, under Comey's direction, would actually participate in the obstruction and destruction of evidence so that nobody could ever use it against any of them. Now, originally we thought that might only be Hillary Clinton, but as we find out, Mr. Mueller, Mr. Comey, Mr. Rosenstein were up to their eyeballs when it came to the Russian investigation regarding uranium. If they were doing their jobs, they should never, ever allowed that sale of American uranium to go to a company that they knew would end up in Russian hands. So if you look at Cheryl Mills, Heather Samuelson, John Bentel, Brian Pagliano, Paul Gambetta, these are people that were potential targets. And what does Director Comey do? He makes sure that they walk, because if they were properly interviewed like good prosecutors or good investigators normally do, you start there and you say, you help us with what happened and what you were told by above you, and then we won't prosecute you to the full extent of the law. That's how deals are made. That's how you get to a Mr. Big in a racketeer organized confederation. Mr. Comey and the FBI apparently relied on the Fusion GPS investigation, knowing where it came from, knowing who paid for it. This is incredible. And if you go back to the Washingtonian article of 2013, it makes pretty clear that Comey and Mueller were basically joined at the hip. In fact, a quote says, the stressed Comey, this is back 2013, the stressed Comey had few people he could turn to for advice. Almost no one was allowed to know the program existed, and disclosing the program's existence, someone outside the circle could send him to prison. In fact, there was only one person in government whom he could confide in and trust, Bob Mueller. Comey thought, a freight train is heading down the tracks about to derail me, my family, my career. He glanced to his left at his fellow passenger, thinking, at least Bob Mueller will be standing on the tracks with me. When the crisis was over, Comey and Mueller shared a dark laugh. Well, it's not quite so amusing when you look at the stakes and whether or not this little experiment in self-government will continue. For example, we know that Comey admitted in testimony before Congress, before the Senate, that he had leaked information in order to get a special counsel appointed. That was his dear friend that would stand beside him through thick and thin, Bob Mueller, which brought memories of when Mr. Comey urged his boss, John Ashcroft, to recuse himself and let them appoint a special counsel. And so Ashcroft trusted Comey, probably shouldn't have, but he did. And then Comey saw to it that his child's godfather, Patrick Fitzgerald, would be the prosecutor. And much like Mueller, he got massive amounts of money and a great, powerful staff so they could go after Karl Rove and Vice President Cheney. They were embarrassed. There was no case there, so they made up one on Scooter Libby, and he became the fall guy. But we know from the leak that Comey admitted that he used an ex-U.S. attorney, identified as Columbia University professor Daniel Rickman, to leak to the New York Times the contents of the memo Comey wrote. If you look at the FBI contract with agents and with people employed by the FBI, makes it very clear that memo that Comey prepared about his conversation with the president was not supposed to ever be provided to the press. That's FBI property. And he violated the law in leaking it. But if you look, then Professor Daniel Rickman got that to a New York Times author, Michael Smith, who later wrote the Comey memos, in which Comey told Congress he directed Rickman to leak. Well, if you go back through and you start looking for this common thread, Michael Smith writing stories for the New York Times about leaks, you find a number of cases where it appears likely, whether it's March 1st, March 4th, March 5th, March 6th, it appears likely that this was James Comey leaking again. The only question is, did he commit a crime in one or all of those events? And the answer is, we'll never know as long as Bob Mueller is special counsel. He needs to have the decency to say it was a mistake for me to take this on. It was a mistake when Comey testified. There was no evidence of any collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. It was a mistake for him to leak out that night that now he's investigating the president for obstruction of justice. Why would he do that? So that he wouldn't get fired, because there was no purpose in his investigation. And why would he indict people when he did? Because even the Wall Street Journal and others around this town began to say, you know what, Mueller really should resign. He had to get those indictments out quick so people would not keep calling for his resignation. Well, some of us are. We've got to clean this town up, and it will start with the resignation of Mr. Mueller and a proper investigation of all of this underlying case involving Comey, Lynch, the Clintons, and Russia, and Rod Rosenstein that